My daughter asked me to walk her down the aisle, but I'm not her real dad. I spent 22 years raising a daughter who wasn't mine by blood, only to have her biological father show up weeks before her wedding to claim the one moment I had been waiting for. Hey everyone, before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button if you want more stories just like this. Thanks for the support. My name is James, and I'm 52 years old. I spent 22 years raising a daughter who wasn't mine by blood, only to have her biological father show up weeks before her wedding to claim the one moment I had been waiting for. For the past 22 years, I've had the privilege of raising a daughter who isn't biologically mine, but who I love as if she were my own flesh and blood. It all began when I met Jennifer, the woman who would become my wife, and her 4-year-old daughter Sophia. Jennifer had been raising Sophia alone since her biological father had abandoned them when Sophia was just a baby. From the moment I met them both, I knew my life was about to change in ways I couldn't have imagined. Jennifer and I fell in love quickly, and within a year, we were married. I knew that marrying her meant becoming a father to Sophia, and I embraced that role with all my heart. I still remember the first time Sophia called me Dad. She was 6 years old, and we were at a park. She had fallen off the swings and scraped her knee. As I cleaned her wound and put a bandage on it, she looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Thanks, Dad." My heart melted in that moment, and I knew there was nothing I wouldn't do for this little girl who had so completely captured my heart. The years that followed were filled with the ordinary moments that make up a life. Teaching Sophia to ride a bike, helping her with homework, attending her dance recitals and soccer games, comforting her when she had her heart broken for the first time, and watching her grow into the remarkable woman she is today. Through it all, I never once thought of her as anything other than my daughter. Biology didn't matter to me. What mattered was the love we shared and the bond we had formed. When Sophia graduated from college, I couldn't have been prouder. I sat in the audience, tears streaming down my face as I watched her walk across that stage to receive her diploma. All those years of sacrifice, of working extra hours to pay for her education, of staying up late to help her study, it had all been worth it to see her achieve her dreams. 2 years ago, Sophia met a wonderful young man named Matthew at a friend's wedding. They hit it off immediately, and it wasn't long before they were inseparable. I watched their relationship blossom, and I could see how happy Matthew made Sophia. He was kind, respectful, and ambitious, everything I could have hoped for in a partner for my daughter. Last Christmas, Matthew proposed to Sophia during a family gathering. The joy and excitement that followed were palpable. We spent the next few months planning for the wedding, which was to take place in June. Sophia asked Jennifer to be her matron of honor, and Matthew asked me to be one of his groomsmen. I was honored, of course, but I couldn't help feeling a little disappointed that I wouldn't have a more central role in the ceremony. Then, 3 months ago, Sophia came to me with tears in her eyes. She told me she had something important to ask me. My heart sank, thinking something was wrong. But then she took my hands in hers and said, "James, you've been the best dad a girl could ask for. You've been there for me through everything, and I can't imagine anyone else walking me down the aisle on my wedding day. Will you do me the honor of giving me away?" I was overwhelmed with emotion. Tears filled my eyes as I pulled Sophia into a tight hug. "Of course, sweetheart," I managed to say. "It would be my absolute honor." In that moment, all the years of love and sacrifice felt validated. This was the culmination of everything I had hoped for as a father. The opportunity to stand by my daughter's side as she began the next chapter of her life. The next few weeks were filled with wedding preparations. We went to fittings for Sophia's dress, tasted cakes, and finalized the guest list. Sophia and I even picked out a special father-daughter dance song. Everything was falling into place, and I was looking forward to what I knew would be one of the happiest days of my life. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Just when everything seemed perfect, a ghost from the past reappeared, threatening to shatter the happiness we had all been looking forward to. It started with a phone call that would change everything. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening, just as Jennifer and I were settling in for the night. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, and I almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me answer, though, a nagging feeling that I shouldn't ignore it. "Hello," I said, trying to sound cheerful despite the long day I'd had. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then a voice I hadn't heard in over 2 decades spoke. "Is this James?" The voice was vaguely familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. "Yes, this is James. Who am I speaking with?" "It's Richard," the voice said. "Sophia's biological father." I felt a jolt go through me, as if I'd been struck by lightning. Richard. The name brought back a flood of memories, none of them good. He was the man who had abandoned Jennifer and a baby Sophia, leaving Jennifer to raise their daughter alone while he pursued a life free of responsibility. Jennifer had rarely spoken of him, and when she did, it was with a mixture of anger and hurt. He had never once tried to contact Sophia in all these years. Never sent a birthday card or a Christmas gift. Never shown any interest in the daughter he had left behind. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold and guarded. "I heard Sophia is getting married," Richard said, ignoring the hostility in my tone. "I'd like to be invited to the wedding." I was taken aback by his audacity. After 26 years of silence, he expected to be welcomed back into Sophia's life as if nothing had happened. I wanted to tell him exactly where he could go, but I held my tongue, knowing this wasn't a decision I could make alone. "I'll need to discuss this with Jennifer and Sophia," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. "I can't make any promises." "Of course," Richard said smoothly, "but I think you'll find that Sophia will want her real father to walk her down the aisle. It's only right." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, my mind racing. How had he found out about the wedding? And more importantly, how did he expect to waltz back into Sophia's life after all this time and claim the right to walk her down the aisle? Jennifer walked into the room, her brow furrowed with concern. "Who was that, James? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself before delivering the news. "It was Richard," I said, watching as the color drained from Jennifer's face. "Richard? As in, Sophia's father?" Jennifer asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, unable to find the words to explain further. "What did he want?" Jennifer asked, her hands trembling slightly. "He knows about the wedding," I said. "He wants to be invited, and he thinks he should be the one to walk Sophia down the aisle." Jennifer sank onto the sofa, her expression a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. After all this time? After 26 years of silence, he thinks he can just show up and claim his rights as a father? "That's what he said," I replied, sitting down beside her and taking her hand. "I told him I need to discuss it with you and Sophia." We sat in silence for a long time, each lost in our own thoughts. I knew this was going to be difficult for Jennifer, who had worked so hard to provide Sophia with a stable, loving home after Richard had abandoned them. I also knew it would be devastating for Sophia, who had never known her biological father and had always considered me her dad in every way that mattered. The next morning, we sat Sophia down and told her about the phone call. Her reaction was a mixture of confusion, curiosity, and a hint of something I couldn't quite identify, perhaps a longing to know the man who had given her life, despite his abandonment. "I don't know what to say," Sophia said, her brow furrowed in thought. "I've never even met him. I don't know anything about him except what you've told me, Mom." "That's all there is to know, sweetheart," Jennifer said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "He left us when you were a baby and never looked back." "I know," Sophia said softly, "but he's still my biological father. I can't help wondering about him, you know?" I understood her curiosity, but it still stung to think that she might consider allowing Richard to take the place I had earned through 22 years of love and sacrifice. I tried to push those selfish thoughts aside, reminding myself that this was Sophia's decision to make, not mine. Over the next few days, Richard began calling regularly, each time pressing for an invitation to the wedding and insisting on his right to walk Sophia down the aisle. Jennifer wanted to block his number and be done with him, but Sophia hesitated, torn between her loyalty to me and a natural curiosity about the man who was her biological father. "I don't want to hurt you, James," Sophia told me one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "You've been the best dad anyone could ask for. But I can't help feeling like I should at least meet him, you know?" hear his side of the story. I nodded, understanding her dilemma, even as my heart ached at the thought of losing the honor I had been so looking forward to. I understand, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. This is your day, and you should do what feels right for you. But inside, I was devastated. The thought of standing by while Richard took the place I had earned through years of love and sacrifice was almost more than I could bear. I had been there for Sophia through everything. Her first day of school, her broken heart at 16, her college graduation. I had dried her tears, celebrated her achievements, and loved her unconditionally. And now, after all these years, Richard thought he could just waltz back into her life and claim the one moment I had been looking forward to more than any other. As the days passed, the tension in our household grew. Jennifer and I argued about how to handle the situation, while Sophia became more withdrawn and contemplative. I could see the conflict in her eyes every time Richard's name was mentioned, and I knew she was struggling with a decision that could potentially tear our family apart. The wedding was now just 6 weeks away, and we still hadn't resolved the issue. Richard continued to call, his tone growing more insistent with each conversation. He seemed to believe that he had some inherent right to be part of Sophia's life, despite his long absence, and he wasn't shy about expressing his opinion. "You've had your turn," he said during one particularly heated conversation. "It's time for the real father to step up and do what's right." I hung up on him, my hands shaking with anger. How dare he suggest that my 22 years of fatherhood were merely a turn that was now over? How dare he imply that his biological connection to Sophia somehow trumped the years of love and devotion I had invested in her? But as I sat there, fuming at his audacity, I couldn't help but worry. What if Sophia decided to give him the chance he was asking for? What if she chose to let him walk her down the aisle instead of me? The thought was almost too painful to contemplate, but I knew I had to prepare myself for that possibility. The following weeks were some of the most challenging our family had ever faced. The once joyous anticipation of Sophia's wedding had been replaced by a tense uncertainty that hung over our household like a dark cloud. Every conversation seemed to circle back to Richard and his demands, and the division within our family grew more pronounced with each passing day. Jennifer was adamant that Richard should have no role in the wedding, let alone the honor of walking Sophia down the aisle. She couldn't understand how Sophia could even consider allowing the man who had abandoned them to take such a significant role in her special day. After everything he did, or rather, everything he didn't do, he has no right to show up now and demand anything, Jennifer argued during one of our many late-night discussions. He wasn't there for her first steps, her first day of school, her first heartbreak. He hasn't earned the right to be part of this moment. I agreed with her completely, but I also understood Sophia's dilemma. How could she not be curious about the man who was biologically her father? How could she not wonder about him, even if she had no intention of allowing him to take my place? Sophia, caught between her loyalty to me and her natural curiosity about Richard, became increasingly withdrawn. She spent hours in her room, often on the phone with friends or Matthew, seeking advice and support. When she did join us for family activities, there was a noticeable distance in her demeanor, a preoccupation that made it clear her mind was elsewhere. One evening, I found her sitting alone on the back porch, staring out into the darkness. I took a seat beside her, not saying anything at first, just offering her my presence. "He called again today," Sophia said softly, breaking the silence. "Richard?" I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "He wants to meet," she said. "He says he has things he wants to explain, things he wants me to understand about why he left." "What did you tell him?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I told him I'd think about it," she replied, turning to look at me. "Is that okay, James? I mean, I know how you and Mom feel about this, but I can't help feeling like I need to at least hear what he has to say." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Sophia, you're an adult now. You have to make your own decisions about this. I just want you to be happy, and I don't want to see you get hurt." "I know," she said, leaning her head against my shoulder. "That's what makes this so hard. I don't want to hurt you or Mom, but I also feel like I need to do this for myself." We sat in silence for a while longer, the weight of her decision hanging between us. I wanted to tell her not to meet Richard, to protect her from potential disappointment and hurt, but I also knew that this was something she needed to figure out for herself. The next day, Sophia called Richard and arranged to meet him at a coffee shop the following weekend. Jennifer was furious when she found out, accusing me of encouraging Sophia's decision. I just think she needs to get this out of her system, I argued, trying to reason with her. Once she meets him and sees what kind of person he is, maybe she'll be able to put this curiosity to rest and move on. And what if she doesn't? Jennifer retorted, her eyes flashing with anger. What if she falls for his sob story and decides to let him walk her down the aisle? Are you prepared for that, James? The question hit me like a physical blow. Was I prepared for that possibility? Could I stand by and watch Richard take the place I had earned through 22 years of love and devotion? I didn't have an answer, and that scared me more than anything. The day of the meeting arrived, and Sophia was a bundle of nerves. She spent hours getting ready, changing her outfit multiple times before settling on a simple but elegant dress. As she stood in front of the mirror, I could see the conflict in her eyes, the part of her that was curious about this man who was her biological father, and the part of her that felt guilty for even considering meeting him. "You look beautiful," I said, standing in the doorway of her room. She turned to me, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing, James?" "I think you're doing what you feel you need to do," I replied, offering her a reassuring smile. "Just remember that no matter what happens, you have a family who loves you and will always be here for you." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Thank you, Dad, for everything." The word Dad hung in the air between us, a reminder of the bond we shared that went far beyond biology. It gave me a glimmer of hope that, regardless of what happened with Richard, our relationship would remain strong. Sophia left for the coffee shop, and Jennifer and I were left to wait anxiously for her return. The hours that followed were some of the longest of my life. I tried to distract myself with household chores and yard work, but my mind kept drifting back to the coffee shop, wondering what was being said, how Sophia was reacting, what Richard was telling her. When Sophia finally returned home, hours later than she had planned, her expression was unreadable. She walked into the living room where Jennifer and I were waiting, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. "How did it go?" Jennifer asked, her voice tight with anticipation. Sophia sank onto the sofa, letting out a long sigh. "It was intense," she said, running a hand through her hair. "He told me a lot of things about why he left, about his life since then." And I prompted, my heart pounding in my chest. "And I don't know what to think," she admitted, her eyes filling with tears. "Part of me wants to believe him, to understand why he did what he did. But another part of me is so angry at him for all the years he missed, for all the moments he wasn't here for." Jennifer moved to sit beside Sophia, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Whatever you're feeling is valid, sweetheart. You don't owe him anything." "I know," Sophia said, leaning into her mother's embrace. "But it's not that simple. He's still my biological father. I can't just ignore that fact." The conversation continued late into the night, with Sophia sharing details of her meeting with Richard. He had apparently painted a picture of himself as a troubled young man who had made mistakes but had since turned his life around. He claimed to have thought about Sophia often over the years, but had felt unwelcome and unsure how to reconnect. "He said he's been following my life through social media," Sophia told us, her voice barely above a whisper. "He knew when I graduated from college, when I got my first job. He even knew about Matthew before he called." The revelation sent a chill down my spine. Richard had been watching Sophia's life from a distance, a silent observer who had never made an effort to be part of it until now. It felt invasive and unsettling, but Sophia seemed to view it as evidence that he cared about her, even if he hadn't known how to show it. As the night wore on, it became clear that Sophia was no closer to making a decision about who would walk her down the aisle. The meeting with Richard had only complicated matters further, adding layers of emotion and confusion to an already difficult situation. With the wedding now just 3 weeks away, the tension in our household continued to mount. Jennifer and I found ourselves arguing more often, our frustration and anxiety spilling over into our interactions with each other. Sophia, caught in the middle, became even more withdrawn, spending most of her time at Matthew's apartment or with friends, clearly seeking refuge from the conflict at home. I knew we couldn't continue like this. Something had to give, and soon. The wedding was approaching rapidly, and we still didn't have a resolution to the question of who would walk Sophia down the aisle. It was time to take matters into my own hands, to confront Richard directly and put an end to this uncertainty once and for all. The decision to confront Richard didn't come easily, but I knew it was necessary. Our family was being torn apart by this uncertainty, and the wedding was now just 2 weeks away. I couldn't stand by and watch the woman I loved and the daughter I adored continue to suffer because of this man's sudden reappearance. I called Richard the next morning, arranging to meet him at a neutral location, a small park not far from where he was staying. The weather was unseasonably warm for early May, with a bright blue sky and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming flowers. It was the kind of day that should have been filled with joy and anticipation, not conflict and uncertainty. Richard was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench near a small pond. He stood as I approached, extending a hand in greeting. I ignored it, choosing instead to remain standing, a physical barrier between us. "Thank you for meeting me," Richard said, his tone casual as if we were old friends catching up after a long time apart. "I'm not here for pleasantries," I replied, my voice cold and direct. "I'm here to talk about Sophia and the wedding." Richard nodded, his expression unreadable. "I understand. Please sit. We can talk." I remained standing for a moment longer before finally taking a seat on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining as much distance as possible between us. "I've been a father to Sophia for 22 years. I began, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. "I've been there for her through everything, the good times and the bad. I've loved her as my own, and she's always considered me her dad in every way that matters." "I don't doubt that," Richard said, his gaze fixed on the pond in front of us. "And I'm grateful for the role you've played in her life. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm her biological father. It's my right to walk her down the aisle." "Right," I repeated, my voice rising with anger. "What right are you talking about? The right to abandon a pregnant woman and a newborn baby? The right to disappear for 26 years without a word? The right to show up weeks before her wedding and demand to take the place of the man who has actually been a father to her?" Richard flinched at my words, but didn't back down. "I made mistakes, I'll admit that. I was young, foolish, and scared. But I've changed. I've spent years thinking about Sophia, regretting my decisions, wondering how I could make things right." "Make things right?" I scoffed. "You can't make 26 years of absence right with a few phone calls and a sob story. You can't erase the fact that you weren't there for her first steps, her first day of school, her high school graduation. You weren't there to dry her tears when she had her heart broken or to celebrate her achievements." "I was." "I know," Richard said softly, turning to look at me. "And I'm not trying to take that away from you. But this is different. Walking your daughter down the aisle is a symbolic moment, a passing of the torch from one generation to the next. It's a moment that should be shared between a father and his biological daughter." The words hit me like a physical blow. Was that all this was to him? A symbolic moment, a photo opportunity? Did he have any understanding of the years of love and sacrifice that had gone into raising Sophia, of the deep bond we shared that had nothing to do with biology? "Symbolic," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You think this is just about symbolism? This is about 22 years of being there for Sophia, of loving her unconditionally, of putting her needs before my own. This is about the nights I stayed up with her when she was sick, the hours I spent helping her with homework, the tears I shed at her college graduation. This is about the bond we share, a bond that has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with love." Richard was silent for a moment, his gaze drifting back to the pond. "I understand that you love her," he said finally, "and I'm not trying to diminish that. But I'm her father. I have a connection to her that you can never have, no matter how much you love her." "A connection?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "What connection is that?" The connection of shared DNA? The connection of abandonment? The connection of 26 years of silence. Richard's jaw tightened to my words, his eyes flashing with anger. You don't know anything about me or what I've been through. You have no right to judge me. I have every right to judge you, I retorted, my voice rising. I'm the one who has been there for Sophia, who has picked up the pieces you left behind. I'm the one who has loved her and supported her and been a father to her in every way that matters. We sat in silence for a while, the anger and resentment hanging between us like a thick fog. The park around us seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of us, locked in a battle for the heart of the woman we both claimed to love. Why now? I asked finally, my voice softer now, more questioning than accusatory. Why show up now, after all these years? Richard sighed, running a hand through his hair. I've been thinking about reaching out for a long time, he admitted, but I was scared. I didn't know how she would react, if she would even want to see me. When I heard she was getting married, I knew it was now or never. And you thought you could just waltz back in her life and take over? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. No, Richard said, shaking his head. I didn't expect it to be easy. I wanted a chance to get to know her, to be part of her life in some small way. And yes, I hoped that she would let me walk her down the aisle. It's something I've dreamed about for years, even when I knew it might never happen. As he spoke, I caught a glimpse of the vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. For the first time, I saw not just a man who had abandoned his family, but a human being who had made mistakes and was now grappling with the consequences of those mistakes. I'm not trying to take your place in her life, Richard continued, his voice softening. I know I can't erase the past or make up for all the years I missed, but I'm asking for a chance to be part of her future, even in a small way. We sat in silence for a while longer, the anger between us slowly giving way to a grudging understanding. I still didn't agree with his request, didn't believe he had any right to demand to walk Sophia down the aisle, but I could see that his motives weren't entirely selfish. I can't make this decision for Sophia, I said finally, rising to my feet. It has to be her choice, whatever that may be. Richard nodded, standing as well. I understand, and I respect that. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of relief mixed with lingering uncertainty. The confrontation hadn't resolved anything, but it had given me a clearer understanding of Richard's perspective. He wasn't just a villain trying to disrupt our family. He was a complicated human being with his own regrets and desires. What I didn't realize as I left the park was that our conversation hadn't been as private as I had thought. Unbeknownst to either of us, Sophia had arrived at the park just as our meeting was ending. She had heard enough of our conversation to understand the depth of the conflict between us, and she was now faced with an even more difficult decision than before. Sophia stood frozen behind a large oak tree, her heart pounding in her chest. She had come to the park hoping to find me, to talk about the decision that had been weighing so heavily on her mind. Instead, she had stumbled upon a conversation that would change everything. As she watched me walk away, Sophia remained hidden, her mind racing with the words she had just heard. The raw emotion in my voice, the pain in Richard's words, it was all too much to process. She had known this was difficult for me, for all of them, but she hadn't realized the depth of the conflict until now. For weeks, Sophia had been torn between her loyalty to me and a natural curiosity about the man who was biologically her father. She had struggled with the decision of who should walk her down the aisle, weighing the years of love and devotion I had shown her against the biological connection she shared with Richard. But hearing our conversation had changed everything. She had heard the anguish in my voice as I spoke of the years I'd spent raising her, the love I had poured into our relationship, the bond we shared that had nothing to do with biology. She had also heard the regret in Richard's voice, the longing for a connection he had forfeited through his absence. As Sophia walked home from the park, her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. She thought about the memories she had with me, teaching her to ride a bike, attending her dance recitals, drying her tears after her first heartbreak, the pride in his eyes at her college graduation. These were the moments that had shaped her, the moments that had defined what fatherhood meant to her. She also thought about Richard, about the brief meeting they had had at the coffee shop. He had seemed sincere in his regret, genuine in his desire to reconnect. But was that enough? Did a few weeks of effort make up for 26 years of absence? When Sophia arrived home, she found Jennifer in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The tension between them had been palpable in recent weeks, but as Sophia walked in, Jennifer turned to her with a look of concern. "Where have you been?" Jennifer asked, her voice softening as she took in Sophia's distressed expression. "You look upset." "I went to the park to find James," Sophia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I overheard him talking to Richard." Jennifer's eyes widened with alarm. "What did you hear?" "Everything," Sophia replied, sinking onto a kitchen chair. "I heard how much it means to James to walk me down the aisle, how hurt he is by Richard's request. I also heard Richard's side, his regret, his desire to reconnect." Jennifer sat down beside her, taking her hand. "And what are you thinking, sweetheart?" Sophia took a deep breath, the decision finally becoming clear in her mind. "I'm thinking that I've been an idiot," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I've been so focused on this biological connection, this curiosity about Richard, that I almost lost sight of what really matters." "What really matters?" Jennifer prompted gently. "You," Sophia said, her voice choked with emotion. "And James, the family we've built together. The love and support you've both given me my entire life. That's what matters, not some abstract concept of biological connection." Jennifer wrapped her arms around Sophia, holding her as she cried. "Oh, sweetheart, we love you so much, and we just want you to be happy." "I know," Sophia said, pulling back and wiping her tears. "And that's why I need to make this right." Later that evening, when I returned home, Sophia asked to speak with me alone. We sat on the back porch, just as we had so many times before, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the backyard. "I overheard you talking to Richard today," Sophia began, her voice soft but steady. "At the park." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "I see. I'm so sorry, James," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry for putting you through this, for making you feel like your role in my life wasn't secure. I've been so caught up in this curiosity about Richard that I almost lost sight of what really matters." "What really matters?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "You," Sophia said, taking my hand in hers. "And Mom, the family we've built together. The years of love and support you've given me. That's what matters, not some abstract concept of biological connection." Tears streamed down my face as I listened to her words. The relief and love I felt overwhelming me. "Oh, Sophia," I managed to say, pulling her into a tight hug. "You don't have to apologize for anything. You were trying to understand a complicated situation, and there's nothing wrong with that." "But I hurt you," Sophia said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "I can see that now, and I'm so sorry. We all got caught up in this," I replied, stroking her hair. "The important thing is that we're talking about it, that we're working through it together." Sophia pulled back, her eyes shining with determination. "I've made my decision," she said. "I want you to walk me down the aisle. You're my dad in every way that matters, and I can't imagine anyone else having that honor." The words I've been longing to hear filled me with a joy so profound it was almost painful. "Oh, Sophia," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I would be honored. Absolutely honored." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the past few weeks lifting from our shoulders. The decision had been made, and with it came a sense of peace and resolution. "But what about Richard?" I asked finally. "Have you thought about how you'll tell him?" Sophia nodded, her expression serious. "I'll call him tomorrow," she said. "It won't be easy, but needs to be done. I'll be kind but firm, explaining that while I appreciate his interest in reconnecting, the role of walking me down the aisle belongs to you." The next day, Sophia called Richard, putting the phone on speaker so Jennifer and I could listen. The conversation was difficult but respectful, with Sophia explaining her decision clearly and compassionately. "I understand," Richard said when she finished, his voice tinged with disappointment but not anger. "I can't say I'm not disappointed, but I respect your decision. I'd still like to be invited to the wedding. if that's okay with you." Sophia looked at us, and I nodded. "Yes," she said. "We'd like you to be there." With that, the conflict that had been tearing our family apart was resolved. The tension in our household began to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of excitement and anticipation for the wedding. Jennifer and I reconciled, our arguments giving way to a deeper understanding and appreciation for each other. As the wedding day approached, Sophia and I spent more time together, finalizing the details of our father-daughter dance and discussing the vows she would be exchanging with Matthew. The joy and anticipation that had been overshadowed by the conflict with Richard returned, stronger than ever. On the day before the wedding, Sophia came to find me as I was working in the garden. She sat down on the grass beside me, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I've been thinking about what you said to Richard," she said softly, "about how being a father has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with love." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "You were right," she said, taking my hand. "You've been my dad in every way that matters, and I'm so grateful for the love and support you've given me throughout my life." "I love you, Sophia," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "More than you'll ever know." "I love you too, Dad," she replied, leaning her head against my shoulder. "And I can't wait for you to walk me down the aisle tomorrow." As we sat there in the garden, the sun setting behind us, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me. The conflict with Richard had been difficult, but it had also strengthened our family bonds and reinforced the truth that love, not biology, is what truly makes a family. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of spring blossoms. I woke early, my heart filled with a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Today was the day I'd been looking forward to for months. The day I would walk Sophia down the aisle and give her away to the man she loved. As I made my way downstairs, I found Jennifer already in the kitchen, a cup of coffee in hand and a smile on her face. She had been my rock throughout this entire ordeal, supporting me even when she was struggling with her own complicated feelings about Richard's reappearance. "Big day," she said, wrapping her arms around me in a warm embrace. "Are you ready?" I nodded, my throat too tight with emotion to speak. Jennifer seemed to understand, squeezing my hand before releasing me. "I'm so proud of you, James," she said softly. "The way you've handled this whole situation with such grace and love. You're an amazing father to Sophia, and don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Her words brought tears to my eyes, and I had to blink them away before responding. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said finally. "We've been a team in this, just like we have in everything else." The morning passed in a blur of activity, with family and friends arriving to help with the final preparations. The atmosphere was filled with joy and excitement, a stark contrast to the tension that had filled our home just weeks before. Richard arrived about an hour before the ceremony was set to begin. I greeted him at the door, offering a handshake that he accepted with a nod of understanding. There was no animosity between us now, just a mutual respect for the decision Sophia had made. "I appreciate you inviting me," Richard said, his eyes scanning the bustling house. "It means a lot. Sophia wanted you here," I replied, leading him into the living room where the other guests were gathering. Family is important to her, in all its forms. As the time for the ceremony approached, I made my way to Sophia's room to check on her. She was standing in front of the mirror, her wedding dress a vision of lace and silk, her hair styled in an elegant updo with a few tendrils framing her face. "You look beautiful," I said, my voice filled with awe. Sophia turned to me, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. "Thank you, Dad," she said, using the word that had come to mean so much to both of us. "Are you ready?" "More ready than I've ever been for anything," I replied, offering her my arm. As we made our way to the backyard where the ceremony was to take place, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me. The past few weeks had been challenging, but they had also reinforced the strength of our family bonds and the depth of the love we shared. The ceremony was beautiful, with heartfelt vows and tears of joy from family and friends. As I walked Sophia down the aisle, her hand tucked into the crook of my arm, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this moment. When we reached the altar, I lifted Sophia's veil and kissed her cheek, whispering, "I love you more than words can say." "I love you too, Dad," she whispered back, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. As I took my seat, I watched as Matthew took Sophia's hands in his expression one of pure love and adoration. The officiant began the ceremony, speaking of the commitment and devotion that marriage requires. I found myself reflecting on my own marriage to Jennifer, on the challenges we had faced and the love that had sustained us through it all. When it came time for the exchange of vows, Matthew and Sophia spoke from the heart, their words filled with emotion and sincerity. I listened with tears in my eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of their love for each other. "I promise to love you, support you, and cherish you for all the days of my life," Matthew said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise to be the partner you deserve, to stand by your side through thick and thin, to celebrate your joys and comfort you in your sorrows." Sophia's response was equally heartfelt. "I promise to love you, honor you, and respect you for all the days of my life," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I promise to be the partner you deserve, to support your dreams, to laugh with you in times of joy and hold you in times of sorrow. You are my best friend, my soulmate, and the love of my life." As they exchanged rings and shared their first kiss as husband and wife, the guests erupted in applause and cheers. I watched with a heart full of love and pride, grateful for the opportunity to witness such a beautiful moment. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. When it came time for the father-daughter dance, Sophia approached me, her eyes shining with love. "Ready for our dance, Dad?" she asked, taking my hand. "More ready than I've ever been for anything," I replied, leading her to the dance floor. As we swayed to the music, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this moment. 22 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion had culminated in this perfect day, a celebration of the family we had built together. "You know," Sophia said softly, resting her head on my shoulder, "I used to wonder what it would be like to have my biological father walk me down the aisle. But now, I can't imagine anyone else but you." My heart swelled with love and gratitude. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be, sweetheart," I replied, holding her a little tighter. "You made me the happiest man in the world today." As the song came to an end, Sophia pulled back to look at me, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. "Thank you for everything, Dad," she said. "For being there for me, for loving me unconditionally, for being the best father a girl could ask for. It's been my honor and my privilege," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Later in the evening, as the celebration continued, I found myself standing with Richard near the bar. We had exchanged polite greetings earlier, but this was our first real conversation of the day. "She's beautiful," Richard said, his gaze fixed on Sophia as she danced with Matthew. "You've done an amazing job raising her." "We both did," I replied, surprising myself with the admission. "Jennifer and I, together. And now, you have a chance to be part of her life too, if that's what you both want." Richard nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I like that," he said. "I know I can't make up for lost time, but I'd like to get to know her, to be part of her life in some small way." "She's open to that," I said. "But it'll take time. Trust has to be earned." "Understand," Richard replied. "And I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As the evening drew to a close and Sophia and Matthew prepared to leave for their honeymoon, I felt a sense of contentment and peace wash over me. The conflict that had threatened to tear our family apart had been resolved, replaced by a deeper understanding and appreciation for the bonds that connected us. Watching Sophia and Matthew drive away, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. 22 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion had culminated in this perfect day, a celebration of the family we had built together. Jennifer came to stand beside me, taking my hand in hers. "It was a beautiful day, wasn't it?" she said, leaning her head against my shoulder. "The most beautiful," I replied, wrapping my arm around her. I'm so grateful for the family we've built, for the love we share, for the life we've created together. As we stood there, watching the taillights of the car disappear into the night, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this moment. Being a father wasn't about biology or blood ties. It was about love, devotion, and being there for the people you care about, through thick and thin, in good times and bad. I had walked my daughter down the aisle, not because I was her biological father, but because I had earned that honor through 22 years of love and sacrifice. And as I stood there with my wife, watching our daughter begin the next chapter of her life, I knew that there was nothing more meaningful or fulfilling than the love we shared as a family.